Okay, good afternoon, fourth graders. We're going to skip ahead a couple pages in your math journal. The lesson 7-6 is a 2-day lesson. It's one of those ones that when we do them in class, I have to hand you out a sheet, and then I go over it with you and tell you to try and solve the problems, and we're going to go over them the next day. Rather than put that sheet online or try and get it out to you guys, or have you guys have to print it off at home, I thought it would just be a little bit easier for us to go on to 7-7. And this is on page 245 of your math journal. Our skill today is multi-step division number stories. So the directions are for each problem: make an estimate and solve, then answer the actual question. So taking a look at this first one, I've made it a little bit bigger. It probably doesn't all fit on quite well, but Margaret and her friend have 2 summer job offers. And the first one is a babysitting job. And I'm going to highlight that in blue. I'm going to underline in blue so we can keep the information that for the babysitter job kind of together. It is 8 hours each week. Margaret and her friend are both working, and they would earn $208 a week. A summer camp job, I'm going to do this one in red, summer camp job, is 7 hours each week, and they would earn $210 each week. Now they have to share that money because they're working together. It's not how much, they don't each get $210 or $208. So for the estimate on this, we want to make our estimate as easy as we possibly can. So what we know here is if we just wanted to round these, for the babysitting job, it's about $200. And also for the summer camp job, you could round that to 200 as well. Okay? And this is kind of, doing this estimate is kind of an example of how sometimes estimates don't give you the whole picture. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. So first, let's just start with the babysitter job. So the babysitting job is about $200 a week. And if we were going to round 8 hours to the nearest 10, what would we round that to? Is it closer to 0 or closer to 10? Now obviously that's closer to 10. So that's like 200 divided by 10 divided by 2, because the 2 people are Margaret and her friend that are sharing the job. Now, the summer camp job, we're going to put that in parentheses actually, because we've got to do that first. Okay? And we'll figure out what that equals. Now, the babysitting job is also about $200 a week. What's 7 closer to? 0 or 10? What would we round the hours to? 0 or 10? And we'd round that again to 10. And then again, you have to share that by 2. Now, I think you guys are smart enough to realize that if I do this and this, I'm going to get the same answer. Okay? Let's do that step. Let's do the work on that one, okay? So if we go, you can do this in any order. You can go 200 divided by 10 divided by 2, or you can go 200 divided by 2 divided by 10. So let's just first divide it by, well, I'm going to show you the easiest way to divide by 10. If we're dividing by 10, we can just get rid of these zeros. Here's one. Let's take a look at it if we divide. Okay? We think, can 10 go in, we're dividing by 10, how many times can 10 go into 20? 2 times. 2 times 10 is 20. Add a 0, and subtract. Obviously 200 minus 200 is 0, so your answer here is 20. It would make about $20 an hour. And we know that this is going to be the same thing. Because this, oh, my bad, my fault, I forgot a step in there, That's just dividing by the 10. Now we have to take that 20 and divide it by 2. How many times can 2 go into 20? 10 times. 2 times 10 is 20. Subtract. So you'd end up with $10 here each girl would make $10 an hour, and over here they'd make about $10 an hour. So in this case, it's really hard to tell which job is going to pay more money, because when we round, the way that we rounded, you get the same answer. And 10 minus 10 is 0, no matter how you slice it. So this is where you kind of have to go a little above and beyond, and we're going to have to actually solve this. So first thing we're going to do, I'm going to move this up a little bit so we have our workroom here. We've got the babysitting job, which is $208, and the girls have to work 8 hours at that. Because we know we're going to have to do a lot of division here. It's multi-step division. So what I'd like you to do is try and do division to solve this. My first step would be thinking, how many 8s can go into 20? What times 8 gets me close to 20 without going over? Go ahead and pause the video, try and solve this partial quotient division problem, and then hit play once you think you have your answer. And you can review your work. If you get it wrong, you can work through it with me. So when I do this, I know that 8 times 3 is 24, so that's too much. I can only do 8 times 2. 8 times 2 is 16, and I subtract. But before I subtract, I can add a 0 here and a 0 here. 8 minus 0 is 8. Cross out my 200, make it a 100, make that 10 tens. But you can think of it like a 10 minus a 6. And 10 minus 6 is 4. 1 minus 1 is 0. Now we're thinking, how many 8s can go into 48? I know it can't be 10 because 8 times 10 is 80. If I try 5, I know that 8 times 5 is 40. So 48 then would be 6 8s. 8 times 6 is 48. And I subtract. Now you might have different steps than me on the side. You might have went 10 8s and 10 8s and then did 5 8s and then did one more. But the answer is 26. So together, every hour, the girls earn $26. But the girls have to split that because they're both working. So we also need to take that 26 and divide it by 2. Go ahead and solve that one. We're thinking, how many 2's can go into 26? Alright, so here's how we would do that if you've already worked through it. We're thinking 2 times what gets us close to 26. If you weren't sure, you could start with 10 here. 2 times 10 is 20. And subtract. 6 minus 0 is 6. 2 minus 2 is 0. Alright, now I'm thinking, how many 2's go into 6? And 2 times 3 is 6. And I subtract, and that's a 0. So each girl at babysitting earns $13. Now the next one's going to be kind of the same thing, except this time they make $210 and they only have to work 7 hours. And once you get that answer, you're going to have to take that and divide it by 2 as well. So take the answer that you get here and subtract by 2. First solve this partial quotient division problem, take your answer and solve it in here. I want you to go ahead and hit pause, try and work through. If you get stuck, you can hit play and I'll get you going again. Try and do the next step before you refer to me. Okay, so here's how we would start this. I'm just going to look and go, how many 7's can go into 21? Because thinking about 210 is too much for me. I do know that 7 times 3 is 21. And I add a 0, and I add a 0, and I subtract. Hey, check that out. That was pretty easy if you knew your 7's facts. You might have done different steps. You might have done 10 7's and then another 10 7's and another 10 7's, and that's fine. But you should have got $30. And when you got that, I told you to take that 30 and put it in here and do 30 divided by 2. Okay? You could start with 10 here. 2 times 10 is 20. Subtract, I get 10. How many 2's go into 10? 5. 2 times 5 is 10, and subtract. And here you would get $15, because 10 plus 5 is 15. So, what makes us more money? Babysitting or the summer camp? And the answer is summer camp. And they want to know it pays blank more per hour. We're comparing $15 to $13. How much more are you making at the summer camp? This one I think we can probably do in our heads. I know sometimes I tell you not to do things in your head, but 15 minus 13. How much more money are you making here than here? $2. 15 minus 13 is 2. So, the equation for this can get a little tricky. What we have to remember is that the summer camp was more. So the equation for this, if we do the summer camp, what we did was 210 divided by 7 divided by 2. Then we took that answer and we subtracted what we made for the babysitting, which was 208 divided by 8 divided by 2. And your unknown could be M for money, or it could be D for dollars. It could be whatever you really want it to be. It really doesn't matter, as long as you use the letter for your unknown. All right, we're going to do one more. We're looking at this last one. Anna or Anna, my daughter would say it's Anna from Frozen. She'd get mad if I said Anna. Wants to put 72 baseball cards in an album. A square album fits 4 cards per page, and a rectangular album fits 5 cards per page. How many more pages will she need to fit all of the cards if she uses the square album rather than the rectangular album? So what we know is that we are going to need more pages if we use the 4-page book, because you just can't put as many cards in. So when we're writing our estimate here, rather than doing 72, I think what I would probably do is round this to something that I can divide both of them by. So normally I'd tell you to go to 70 here, but we're going to go with 80 because I know 80 is divisible by 4 and 5. So it's 80 divided by, if we put 4 cards in, that's going to tell us how many pages we need, minus 80 divided by 5. And that's going to get us how many pages more we need. So the first thing that we need to do, and you may need scratch paper for this because they only give you so much workspace, is we need to solve 80 divided by 4 and 80 divided by 5. I didn't give myself a whole lot of work in there, but you should solve both of those partial quotients and figure out what you get before you hit play. While you're doing that, I'm going to rewrite this so I have a little bit more room. Okay, taking a look at this first one. I think how many 4s can go into 8? Rather than 80, just focus on the 8. How many 4s, what times 4 equals 8? And that's 2. 4 times 2 is 8. Add my 0, and subtract. 80 minus 80 is 0. You might have done it differently, you might have different steps, but you should have ended up with 20 pages. On this one, it's a little different. You're thinking, how many 5s can go into 8? Well, only 1. 5 times 1 is 5. Add a 0, and subtract. 5 times 10 is 50. 0 minus 0 is 0. 8 minus 5 is 3. Now I'm thinking, how many 5s can go into 30? Or what times 5 equals 30? And that is 6. 5 times 6, 30, and subtract. So over here we have 16. So really, if you look at this, it's kind of set up for us. 20 minus 16. If you need to do that, go ahead and write that. This becomes a 1, this becomes a 10. It's 110 over here now. This represents 1 in our tens place. 10 minus 6 is 4. And 1 minus 1 is 0. So our estimate is 4 pages. Alright, I know I'm moving fast. fast, but I'm trying to keep the time down on this so it's not so long. We're going to move on. And this time we actually have to solve it. So what we're looking at here, sometimes it makes more sense to actually write your equation down. So this time what it's going to be is it's going to be 72 divided by 4 minus 72 divided by 5. So we need to take time to solve both of those. So right now, I just want you to go ahead and solve both of those. Hit pause, try and do the partial quotients for them. Then when you think you have them, hit play and I'll go over both of them. And I'll discuss, you're going to have a remainder here and I'll discuss with you what to do with that. Okay, how many 4s can go into 7? 1. 4 times 1 is 4. Add a 0, and subtract. 2 minus 0 is 2, 7 minus 4 is 3. So we're thinking, how many 4s can go into 32? You might have done more steps, but in the interest of moving fast, I know that 4 times 8 is 32. And I subtract. So if we use this, we're going to need 18 pages, because 10 plus 8 is 18. On this one, again, you can only do 10. 5 times 10 is 50. When you subtract, you'll get 22. So you're thinking, how many 5s can go into 22, which is 4? 5 times 4 is 20. And subtract, and you get a 2. So your answer here would be 14, remainder 2. But if you only use 14 pages, what this is telling us is if we use 14 pages, we're going to have 2 cards left over that aren't in there. So instead of just using 14 pages, we need to use an extra page. So instead of using 14 pages, you need 15. 14 pages have 5 cards in them. The 15th page is only going to have 2 cards in the sleeve or whatever it's holding. So the square album takes 18 pages. The rectangular one takes 15. How many more pages is that? 18 minus 15. And 8 minus 5 is 3. 1 minus 1 is 0. So it should be 3 more pages. The question at the bottom is, what did you do with the remainder that you found? And the answer to that is, you round it up. We talked before spring break about what to do with remainders, that sometimes you have to ignore them, sometimes you have to report them as a fraction, and sometimes you have to round up. This is one of those situations that if you didn't round up the number of pages, some of the cards wouldn't get into the book, and we want all of the cards in the book. So the answer to this is we rounded up to, or we used another page or rounded up. Your assignment for today is the math boxes for this section, which can be found on page 247. And they look like this. I'm going to go to the print version because it looks more like yours. Again, more practice on partial products. If you need help, like just a reminder of what to do, because I haven't posted the answers for this yet, go to today's review and watch. We did 2 really similar to this. And if you just follow those steps, but with these numbers, it'll help you. Number 2 says, we bought 6 granola bars brought 6 granola bars to the game. At the end of the game, there were 2 1/2 bars left. How much were eaten? Started with 6 minus 2 1/2. The toughest thing with this is you got to regroup from your 6. So we cross it out, we make it a 5, and we take that other 1 and we make it a fraction over 2. See how you can do on that? Down here, what you need to do is understand that this is the first step. This is what it looks like in step 2. This is what you look like in step 3. What is it going to be? Think about the array that it makes. What is this array? What's that array? What's this array? And then also, don't forget down here to describe the pattern, what's happening. On the next one, we have use the plot line to answer it. Water is left, part of the water bottles. Bottles are all the same size. If you combine the water in the bottles that are 4/8 full, how much water would you have? So the key word here is we're combining all of the 4/8. That's how much would you have if you combined both of those. And number 5, explain, or Paula's answer to problem 4 is 4/8. Explain why her answer is not correct. So 4/8, if you get 4/8 for this one, it's not correct. Figure out how that would be correct. And again, this is page 247, and I will post the answers for this tomorrow morning. Thank you guys. See you soon.